It was the movie that many believe cemented Arnold Schwarzenegger as a bona fide screen legend. The movie that was once upon a time the most expensive film ever made. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. As it was the 1990s, there was no doubt Arnie was one of the biggest box office action attractions of that era, along with Sly Stallone, Bruce Willis, Wesley Snipes, and Jean-Claude Van Damme, to name but a few. Terminator 2 Judgment Day came blasting onto cinema screens back in July of 1991. It is considered one of the best sci-fi action fiction movies of all time, and one of the best sequel films of all time. It had a major influence on visual effects in films, and it helped usher in the transition from practical effects to reliance on computer-generated imagery. The first Terminator had been a massive hit, a surprise hit, earning over $78.4 million against its $6.4 million budget, and it confirmed Schwarzenegger's status as a lead actor and established James Cameron as a mainstream director. Schwarzenegger was so enamored with the movie, he expressed an interest in doing a sequel, telling Cameron over and over again that the story needed to continue. However, Cameron considered the original a complete story, and that in fact it was Schwarzenegger who was more enthusiastic about making the sequel, and Cameron had no initial plans to make one. After a while, Cameron was on board with the sequel, and here's where I segue into a little history lesson. Any plans to make a second Terminator film were delayed until 1989, in part owing to Cameron's work on other films, such as Aliens of 1986 and The Abyss in 1989. Also because of a dispute with the rights holder Hemdale Film Corporation, Hemdale co-founder John Daly, against Cameron's wishes, had attempted to change the ending of the first Terminator film, nearly resulting in a physical confrontation. A sequel could not be made without Hemdale's approval, as Cameron had surrendered over 50% of his rights to the company to get the first Terminator movie made. Around 1990, unpaid profits from the Terminator led to a lawsuit from Cameron towards Hemdale. As Hemdale were having financial difficulties, Arnold convinced Carolco Pictures to purchase the film rights to the Terminator. He had just worked with them on another big-budget sci-fi film, Total Recall. The deal would eventually cost around $17 million. When the film was eventually greenlit for a scheduled release, Cameron had 6 to 7 weeks to write the script, and he collaborated with his Terminator co-writer William Wisher in March of 1990. The pair spent 2 weeks putting the script together. Principal photography lasted from October 1990 to March 1991, taking place in and around the Los Angeles area on an estimated $94 to $102 million budget. The film will go on to gross an overall total of $520.9 million, making it, as I said earlier, the most expensive film made at the time. Now, if you adjust for inflation in today's market, that grosses over $1.2 billion, which in turn could see it ranked as number 28 in the all-time films grossing list. So not bad for a film that was released over 34 years ago. Now, I fall into the camp of people who watched this movie before the very first Terminator movie, so to go from watching Arnie as the hero to the villain was somewhat jarring, especially as he was quite menacing and intimidating the first time around. I have sometimes wondered between him and Robert Patrick, who would later go on to star as the lead villain, the T-1000 in Terminator 2, as to which one of them was the more menacing and intimidating figure. Yes, universally it's agreed that it's Robert Patrick, but personally I thought Arnie did a very great job of depicting a very menacing villain, especially as he had very little dialogue and he used his facial expressions to portray a very scary character. The whole premise of the movie is centered on John Connor as the future leader of the human resistance. As the machine, known as Skynet, becomes self-aware and begins to systematically wipe out the human race. Skynet sends a Terminator, a highly advanced killing machine, back to the year 1995 to kill John when he's a child. The Resistance sends back a less advanced, reprogrammed Terminator to protect Connor and ensure the future of humanity. Now here comes the section where I summarize the movie and then I highlight some of the key points. So, here we go. The opening of the movie begins with an opening monologue from Sarah Connor. It is the year 2029. Earth has become a dystopian wasteland ravaged by the war between machines, led by the evil artificial intelligence Skynet, and the human resistance led by John Connor. This sets the tone of the movie, giving it that dark and gritty feel of impending doom. It's revealed that Skynet has twice attempted to take out Connor. First by sending a Terminator to the year 1984 to take out Sarah before John was born. The second to take out John himself when he was just a young boy in the year 1995, sending a powerful liquid metal cyborg known as the T-1000. Also on this second time around, the Resistance has sent a Terminator of their own to protect John, a reprogrammed T-800. Now, in a complete role reversal from the first Terminator movie, the good Terminator arrives first. Arriving completely naked, the Terminator goes into a bar searching for a match for clothes. He finds one, but not before getting laughed at, and then going into fight mode and taking out all the biker guys before acquiring his target, and finishing off the scene complete with a leather jacket, a shotgun, a pair of glasses, and a motorbike. Shortly following this, the other Terminator arrives, and an unfortunate police officer is his first victim, eliminating him and taking his uniform and squad car before initiating his search for John Connor. Sarah Connor's first scene is her at a psychiatric ward. It has been revealed that she tried to blow up the factory that made Skynet, as it was prophesied that on August 29, 1997, Skynet will become self-aware, and in response to its creator's attempts to deactivate it, incite a nuclear holocaust, which would lead to the event known as Judgment Day. Sarah was shot and arrested and committed to Pescadero State Hospital. She is interrogated by Dr. Silverman and later beaten up by the guards, with one of them in particular displaying very creepy and offensive tendencies. She had repeatedly tried to escape the ward, but with no success. Sarah has a dream sequence. This is in the extended version of the movie, in which Kyle Reese appears and warns her to protect their son as he is in grave danger. As a result of Sarah's incarceration, John Connor now lives with his foster parents Todd and Janelle. John resents Sarah for attempting to prepare him for his future role and considers her a complete basket case. Both Terminators have approached the foster parents looking for John, with Todd unknowingly revealing to the T-1000 that the T-800 had approached first. John had gone to the mall with his friend Tim to play some video games. The scene comes to a head when the T-1000 has spotted John and goes after him. John looks to escape, but runs into the T-800, setting up a first-time meeting between the two Terminators. The T-800 springs into action and engages in battle with the T-1000, with a gunfight followed by a one-on-one brawl which sees the T-1000 get the upper hand. John escapes onto his motorcycle with the T-1000 in hot pursuit. The T-800 recovers and sets off to rescue John. He succeeds in his rescue and he temporarily puts the T-1000 on the back foot by shooting at the truck, which then crashes and explodes, and this temporarily slows down the T-1000. John attempts to warn Todd and Janelle about the T-1000, but the T-800, after engaging in a phone conversation with Janelle, has deduced that the foster parents have been taken out by the T-1000, who was posing as Janelle. John then looks to save his mom Sarah after the T-800 informs him that she will be the next target for the T-1000. After a little shouting match which sees the Terminator almost take out two passers-by, John sees that the Terminator has orders to obey, and John commands him and orders him to help him go save his mom. Back at the ward, Sarah has hatched her latest attempt to escape and has taken out one of the guards, and then holds up Dr. Silverman and uses him for leverage. She is ultimately thwarted by the guards and tries to desperately escape. After her latest attempt nearly fails, she stumbles across her nemesis the Terminator, to great shock and horror. Her luck changes as she is then saved by the Terminator from the prison guards and then reunited with young John. But unfortunately, it is a short-lived reunion as she becomes acquainted with the T-1000. In a thrilling action sequence, both the Terminator and Sarah blast away the T-1000 whilst protecting John. The T-1000 is thwarted again by the T-800 and goes back into a retreat and thinks up a new strategy to complete his objective. Now, although Sarah is very distrustful of the T-800, she almost takes him out but is prevented by John. Sarah then uses the T-800's knowledge of the future to learn about the revolutionary microprocessor which is being developed by a Cyberdyne engineer named Miles Dyson, and he will be crucial to the creation of Skynet. The trio head to Mexico where Sarah meets with her friend Enrique. Here they reload with all manner of brand new weapons. Sarah ends up having a hellish nightmare in which Judgment Day happens, and she takes it upon herself to go and kill Dyson, as it could prevent Judgment Day from happening. She arrives at Dyson's house and shoots several rounds of bullets, wounding Dyson, but she stops short of eliminating him when she sees that he has a family. The T-800 and John reach the house and reveal the whole story of the Terminator and Judgment Day and his own personal involvement. Dyson agrees to go to Cyberdyne to destroy all evidence of his work and prevent Judgment Day from happening. Whilst at Cyberdyne, the police have been alerted of the group's actions and storm the building, with the Terminator fighting them off but keeping his orders to John not to kill any of the officers. In the chaos, Dyson is caught in the crossfire and is shot. He has in his possession the detonator to activate the bombs, which then goes off and destroys the building in the process. The T-1000 has re-emerged and goes after the trio. After commandeering a helicopter, this leads to the rollercoaster final 40 minutes of intense action and drama. The final showdown at the chemical plant triggers a variety of emotions, from anxiety of wanting the trio to escape, the suspense and the trepidation of watching the T-1000 reform and stalking them after he's initially shot to pieces after he was frozen. The horror of watching the T-1000 completely decimate the Terminator in a one-on-one battle, ending with that very wrenching pull through the body of the Terminator which appeared to have ended him. Then there's the feelings of hope when the Terminator reactivates after finding an alternate power source. The fear of watching the T-1000 nearly tricked John by disguising himself as Sarah, before the real Sarah emerges, and the feelings of willing Sarah on against the T-1000 as she nearly blasts him into the vat of molten fire, almost bagging herself another Terminator kill. This time, she just fell short. The feeling of defeat as the T-1000 has Sarah and John cornered, and then the triumph of watching the Terminator re-emerge and shoot the T-1000 square in the middle before it explodes and falls into the molten fire. And then the great satisfaction of watching the T-1000 flail around in the fire, screaming in agony, replicating all those he had copied before melting away into nothing. Then there's the sadness and the tragedy of the Terminator dying. The Terminator had completed his mission of protecting John and preventing Judgment Day. All semblances of the first Terminator and himself had to be destroyed to prevent a repeat of Judgment Day. And as he could not self-terminate, it fell on Sarah having to pull the trigger and getting him lowered into the vat of fire. John says a tearful goodbye and Sarah thanked the Terminator for his heroics. And then the Terminator met his fate and was lowered into the fire in a very sad ending, with him giving John the thumbs up just before he's terminated. Now, there were two different endings to the movie. In the original theatrical release, Sarah had a final monologue. As Sarah drives down the highway with John, she reflects on her renewed hope for an unknown future, saying that if a machine, a Terminator, could learn the value of human life, so could humanity. And then there was the DVD extended version's ending, where Sarah is now an old woman and her monologue is slightly different. John Connor, the man seen at the beginning of the movie, is all grown up, playing with his daughter and fights his battles as a member of the US Congress. The dark future that was supposed to have happened never did occur, with Sarah again saying that if a Terminator could learn the value of human life, so could humanity. And the movie comes to an end. The absolute brilliance of this movie is so hard for me to put into words. It's a brilliant story arc which spanned over 2 movies and was told in a very cohesive and consistent way. The main villains in all of this being the machines and their rise to power to terminate the human race, going after the leader of the resistance, John Connor, in 2 attempts, before he was born by going after his mother Sarah, and then by going after John himself when he was a teenager. The reprogramming of the Terminator going from villain to hero and learning the value of human life despite being a machine. The incredible action, the fantastic use of CGI, which was amongst the first movies to do so, which added to the movie in terms of great visuals, on top of the action and all the great emotional storytelling. The cast of this movie made for an amazing ensemble, with the key players contributing significantly to this movie's success. The role of the Terminator is my favourite character Arnie has portrayed in his quite storied and prolific movie career. He has a lot more dialogue this time around and he develops a father-like figure relationship with John despite him being a machine. Arnie plays this to perfection and shows his great range with playing this role, going from a menacing stone-cold killer the first time around to a heroic and somewhat sympathetic figure this time around. Arnie was already a massive movie star prior to this movie, but afterwards his career would continue to skyrocket in many successful movies. Thanks to the success of this film, he is forever credited with the catchphrase, "I'll be back," and "Hasta la vista, baby." The role of the Terminator is easily his most recognized role, as he would go on to reprise it another 3 times. Linda Hamilton had a fantastic character arc between the 2 Terminator movies. There was the transformation of a scared young woman, a damsel in distress in Sarah Connor, into a hardcore femme fatale, protecting her son at all costs. Despite playing a more battle-hardened character this time around, Linda did well to portray Sarah's deeply traumatic and psychological traits, which made for an all-round complex but largely significant and interesting character. Now, a fun fact, she had a twin sister, Leslie, who plays her in the nightmare sequence in the movie, and when the T-1000 disguises itself as Sarah. Leslie unfortunately passed away in August 2020, aged 63. May she rest in peace. Linda Hamilton has already had a steady career and has starred in multiple movies like Dante's Peak and Shadow Conspiracy. The T-1000 brilliantly played by actor Robert Patrick, and this was my first introduction to him. Now, he had a brief role in Die Hard 2 just before he landed the role of the T-1000. Following Terminator 2's success, Patrick went on to have a very successful career, with one of his main highlights being his role in The X-Files. Robert Patrick's T-1000 can be seen as a very menacing and threatening character in just the way he looks and walks, like a serial killer that could strike at any time. As menacing as Arnold Schwarzenegger was in Terminator 1, Patrick has him beat here, as he is way more intimidating. The slow menacing walk, the slow turning of the head, the ominous theme that plays whenever he shows up. Patrick's ability to display a machine and not show any human reactions is just incredible. The scene when the 2 Terminators first meet is one of my personal highlights from the movie. The role of the T-1000 was intended for Billy Idol until he had an accident, so Cameron had to cast Patrick instead. Now, considering Patrick was not a major name before this movie, which was Cameron's intention, the ability to play such a memorable character opened the doors for him, and it led to a very successful career, a role he credits as what gave him his entire film career. Edward Furlong plays the troubled teenager and the future leader of the human resistance, John Connor, a role that earned Furlong 2 major honours with a Saturn and an MTV Movie Awards for his breakthrough performance. John is abrasive, impetuous, but also a deeply vulnerable and emotional kid. Furlong was discovered for the part by casting director Mally Finn whilst he was visiting the Pasadena Boys and Girls Club in September of 1990. Following Terminator 2, Furlong went on to star in a number of moderately successful films like Before and After, Little Odessa, and American History X. Going into the 2000s, however, Furlong's career saw a considerable decline as he began to star in straight-to-DVD released films. He also had personal issues with substance abuse, to which he has now fully recovered from. He went on to reprise the role of John Connor 2 more times. Sort of. First in the 1996 theme park ride T2-3D Battle Across Time, alongside them the Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Robert Patrick, and then as a facial capture for CGI in the much maligned Terminator Dark Fate. Despite all his ups and downs, Furlong's performances as Connor will go down in folklore of the Terminator story. Now, those are the 4 main characters, but just to give a shout out to some other notable faces, Joe Morton plays the man responsible for the creation of Skynet, Miles Dyson. His display of an ambitious yet caring family man gave him some depth to the character, and he wasn't just a one-dimensional persona. The scene with Sarah trying to assassinate him and the T-800's reveal was very intense, with all his emotions on display. Morton would go on to have a very steady career and successfully appeared in many TV shows and movies, including the 2 Speed films and Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, just to name a few. Late veteran actor Earl Bowen plays psychiatric consult Dr. Silverman. He had a brief role in Terminator 1, and this time around he had a lot more significant screen time and dialogue. He would go on to reprise the role one last time, briefly appearing in the 3rd outing, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. Jeanette Goldstein and Xander Berkeley feature as the foster parents Janelle and Todd. Their roles are very brief, but they're also involved in a very haunting scene in which the T-1000, disguised as Janelle, takes out Todd. Goldstein has featured in a number of video game voiceover roles, TV shows and movies, including her role as Megan Shapiro in Lethal Weapon 2 and Private Vasquez in Aliens, another James Cameron masterpiece. Xander Berkeley has an impressive resume and he has featured in many successful films including Candyman, A Few Good Men, The Rock and Apollo 13 to name a few. Terminator 2 still holds up to this very day, with its look and its feel, and it has the honour of kickstarting the technological advances in movie making that we experience to this very day. And yes, it was directed by one of the most successful movie directors of all time in James Cameron. It did get positive reviews, with our residential movie critic Robert Ebert stating that the initial concept of a boy finding a father figure in a Terminator that is learning to be human is intriguing. The state-of-the-art physical, special and makeup effects which were roundly praised as revolutionary and spectacular, particularly those calling the T-1000 a technological wonder. Robert Patrick received a lot of praise for his performance as the T-1000, with his performances described as a chilling, expressionless performance and the advanced special effects which create an irreplaceable show-stopping villain. Empire magazine called the character one of the great monsters of the cinema. Linda Hamilton's performances as Sarah Connor was largely praised, and in some circles many felt that she was even better than Sigourney Weaver's performances as Ripley in the Aliens movies. Terminator 2 also won a string of awards, including Best Science Fiction Film, Best Director by James Cameron, Best Actress by Linda Hamilton, Best Performance by a younger actor Edward Furlong, and Best Special Effects. All of these came from the 1992 Saturn Awards, but it also won honours at the 45th British Academy Film Awards, including Best Sound and Best Special Visual Effects. And as I stated already, it grossed a worldwide total of $520 million, and of all the movies in the Terminator franchise, it is widely considered to be the best. Now, I would personally like to say that the franchise should have ended with the first two Terminator films, but as we know, there were more films made afterwards, which included Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis, and Terminator Dark Fate. These follow-ups I feel were highly unnecessary, and it just went on to convolute the whole Terminator story and making it a confusing mess, and in my opinion completely negated the narrative for the first two films, especially if you watch Genesis, where Connor, spoilers, has now become the main villain, and Dark Fate saw young John Connor killed very early on and just completely rendered the whole story of the first Terminator 2 films completely useless. Yes, it was a soft reboot, but going in that direction just took me out of the whole thing. The movies on their own were good standalone action flicks to watch in the cinema, but as it relates to the franchise as a whole, a completely unnecessary direction to take the franchise in. There was also the TV spin-offs. Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, starring Lena Headey and Summer Glau, whom I had the pleasure of meeting at Comic-Con in Chicago back in 2013. I actually quite enjoyed this series and I was very disappointed to see it end after only 2 seasons. And then there was the anime series, Terminator Zero, which has only just recently come out in the last year, which I have yet to see, but as of this recording, it is a show that I will check out in the future, and it looks intriguing. We'll see how it goes. To bring to a close my video on Terminator 2 Judgment Day, I just want to say that this is my absolute favourite movie of all time. I watched it several times in my younger days, and I just never truly got bored of it. The version I watched was the theatrical 91 release on the VHS tapes. Over the years I obtained the full DVD release, which had all the extras including the deleted scenes and the alternate endings, which made me enjoy the film even more, and then there were some fill in the blank parts which made even more sense. It was once upon a time the most expensive film ever made, outside of this long run of the use of CGI, mixed in with practical effects, and the movie still holds up to this very day. Along with the great range of acting from the main cast, the action sequences, the CGI, Terminator 2 is a major piece of cinema history. It's one of the greatest films ever produced.